晚上好，早上好，Hello，大家好。OK，到8点钟了，我们准时开始今天的讲座。All right, and Leo, Yuki, and Radian, you guys can turn the cameras on as we get ready to begin to roll. All right, how's everyone feeling? Hi guys, all good? Nice, very good. OK，接下来呢，我会简单的先用咱们今天讲座的前5到10分钟来简单的做一个自我介绍。那么in the meantime，在这期间呢，还有更多的家长朋友们还有听众在加入我们。那么我们现在就准时开始了。OK，首先呢，来做一个简单的自我介绍。我是 Annie， 是我们全新公益企划 Enlighten the Future 的联合创始人以及主要的负责人。然后我们 Enlighten the Future，中文直译的话呢，可以是启迪、引领或者是点亮未来基金会。那么这个也是非常契合于我们想要做这个全新公益企划的初心，就是希望能够构筑和搭建一个帮助学生去更好的发声的一个平台。来创造呢学生之间同频交流的这么一个机会，因为很多时候我们在听取信息的时候，它是来自四面八方的，有的时候是互联网上各种各样的信息，有的时候呢可能是家长朋友们之间在交流的一些信息，但是我们往往很少也很难去听到孩子们自己就是在这个整个过程当中自己走过，以亲历者、过来人第一视角的这样的分享，所以我们希望呢来做这个事情，来搭建这样的平台和桥梁。所以去更好的聚焦在孩子们自己的真实的心路历程以及个人成长的这个旅程上，能够非常有效的避免信息差。或者是有的时候可能家长朋友会有一些疑问或者孩子们找不到最准确的信息源去获得自己想要的信息那么咱们的 webinar 呢，以及一系列的这种活动呢，就可以非常好的填补这个空缺来帮助大家得到自己想要得到的信息。那么我们的 legal status 是 incorporated not-for-profit organization， 我们是在安省已经注册了的 NGO 有限公司然后我们现在的活动形式其实是非常多种多样的。我们现在目前是以每2周一次为固定的一个频率来做线上的讲座。那么今天呢，实际上就是一个很好的 demonstration。我们讲座的内容和选题也是非常多种多样，涵盖了升学方面的孩子们自己课外活动方面的、个人的兴趣爱好上面的、与学术相关的、如何选择学校。如果您有一些升学上面的问题，或者是孩子有自己一些疑虑的话，或者是择校，以及很多的个人案例的分享。像我们今天3位非常优秀的 AP 学生，包括有 AP 很多经验的这些 guest speakers就是属于这一类型的一个分享。那么我们主要呢也是想做这种学生帮助学生，前辈提携后辈，然后能够共同来创造一个包容度很高并且非常多元化的国际学生社群。这个是我们的 mission and vision 之一也来分享给大家。所以我们本质上是以学生的领导力为核心的推动的企划，我们所有的在这里面学生们的这个 enrollment 以及 engagement 是完整的，而且是 consistent 的。他们会自己负责选题定题，然后呢全程大家之间的沟通，包括分工协作，以及到最后每个人做好自己的 part 来呈现出最终的结果。这是一个非常好的全方位去成长去 grow 的一个机会。那么后续呢，我们会开展非常多样的线上以及线下的活动。那么我们会做讲座会谈圆桌会议比如说我们上一期的内容呢，还没有看到我们上一期内容的家长朋友们还有学生们，可以来关注咱们的 official YouTube channel Everything is there。然后我们会做很多采访类型的，包括分享线下的活动呢可能会包括 workshops 或者是 info sessions 以及我们正在全力去推动的 student mentorship program。那么后续会有更多的非常精彩的信息给到大家，希望大家能够持续的关注我们。那么接下来呢，我们可以看一看咱们怎么样来 engage 我们是一直希望会有更多的学生 engage 的机会然后我们目前为止的话，大家可以来看一下我们 PPT 上面的内容大家可以自己来 reach out， 可以来 propose 话题。那么我们现在呢在参加在听的屏幕前的你，同时也可以成为我们下一个 potential guest speaker if you have something interesting to propose, always let us know。那么作为学生们，我们参与进来的话，有什么样的 benefits 呢？首先的，这是我们最 重要的一点，实际上就是真实领导力提升的机会 （real student leadership）。那么下面的内容呢，大家可以简单的、快速的过一下啊。同时呢，第二点，我觉得非常非常有意义的一点，也是一个 frontline student advocate，作为第一波或者说是作为站在前线的来帮助学生群体去更好发声的，你就会是这一个非常有影响力的集体当中的一员。那么咱们第三点呢是 life-changing global student community， 我们和什么样的人去接触，我们会身边围绕着什么样的同学或者是我们的 comrades， 那我们共同为了一个目标去努力，我们这些create robust bond could be very much lifelong, could be very long term， 所以而且它是 global 性质的，就是你的影响力不仅仅是在我们这个小的社群里面，那么我们同样都是we're in this all together to create very much fanning out impact that we would like to create。那么我们所有的活动呢，都是非常有持续性和连贯性的，就像我刚才讲的一样，每2周我们会固定的和就差不多是周末晚间的一个时间段，会和大家来准时的见面。那么接下来呢，几个非常小的 housekeeping and reminders， 我们现在全程的 webinar 是会录制的，那么将会在24小时之内上传到我们官方的 YouTube 账号。那么还没有关注我们 YouTube 账号的朋友们，可以去点关注，我们上面会有非常多实时的更新，包括阶段性的一些更新，以及每一次讲座的录制。那么完整版呢，都可以在 YouTube 上面找到。所以 don't worry if you feel like you've missed out on anything。我们如果有什么地方听漏了，或者说想要去回看的话，这些都是完全可以在后面我们所有的视频上传上去了之后，大家可以反复的去回看呢，同时呢，可以与身边的人去交流分享我们都非常鼓励大家去这样做。那么接下来的讲座呢，会大部分呢是以英语来进行的，所以如果需要实时翻译的家长朋友们或者是学生们呢，咱们可以点一点这个屏幕中间的 CC， 这个应该是可以做到，或者在 More 这个地方呢，可以点 Captions， 那么它就会自动识别，不管是中文的也好，还是英文的也好会有实时字幕。如果这个能够帮到您更多，那么您可以选择把这个功能打开。然后我们最后的10到15分钟的时间呢，是我们预留给 Q&A 的时间。所以如果您在中途有任何的问题想要去问的话呢，可以在我们的 chat box 里面把你的问题打出来。那么我们会在讲座最后10到15分钟的时间内去 take up some of those questions。那我们同时也很了解咱们今天的选题，是每一个人的个人成长和学习的经历都是不一样的，所以在我们涉及到一些 AP 选课呀、具体的备考时间呢、更具体的个人的学习计划呀，这些非常需要定制或者说是1对1 attention 的话，我们非常鼓励大家在线下或是1对1的这样去咨询get on hold or get in touch with us. We're more than happy to answer any of your more personalized questions. 好的，那么目前为止呢，我们的 housekeeping rules 以及前期的一个介绍就是这样。All right, so we're going to switch to English and that'll be what we stick to for the rest of our webinar. So thank you so much for everyone who's joining us tonight. I'll be stop sharing for a moment so that we can get to see each other a little better. All right, welcome everyone, and we're ready to roll. So today we are very honored to have 3 very experienced AP learners who are also having a lot of insights to give to us, who are reading in. Yuki. The very first thing that we're going to do today is to give them a chance to go on and share a little more about themselves, give us a little bit of the background, and also do a little bit of the self-introduction. All right, so we can go in whichever order. So maybe reading in, you don't mind to get started for us. Off you go.
Okay, hi, I'm Redding, and I'm currently in 10th grade going into 11th grade, and I've been studying AP for a year from 10th grade in my 10th grade academic career, and I've achieved 3 AP scores of 5 in calculus, physics, and Chinese. So yeah, that's basically about me. And next.
Awesome. We're very happy to have you. And next, we're going to have Yuki do a little bit of the self-introduction of herself too.
Hi, my name is Yuki. In September, I'll be in 10th grade. So in 9th grade, I took 4 APs, AP Microeconomics, Psychology, AP Comp Gov, Government, and AP Chinese, Culture and Language. Out of the 4, I have 3 5s and 1 4. These were taken separate from my school. Also, I go to BSS. I really enjoy social sciences. So if you have any questions about those, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Awesome, great. Yeah, so as everyone heard that, if you have any questions specifically for a particular academic interest related to social sciences, then Yuki will be more than happy to answer some of your questions, and we'll be looking forward to that. All right, and last but not least, we have Leo right here. So if Leo, you could go on and do a little bit of your self-introduction, please.
So hello, I'm currently in grade 11. I'm going into grade 12, so my last year of high school. I started AP in grade 9. I took AP Calculus in grade 9. I took AP Chemistry and Physics in grade 10. I took AP English, Biology, Chinese, Macroeconomics, and Psychology in grade 11. And I also go to an IB school, so I'm balancing both APs and IBs. If anyone has any questions regarding IB, I have a lot of answers for that.
Awesome, great. Yeah, so as you can see, Leo has been walking across multiple roads and all very challenging and at the same time rewarding. So I think we have a very, very well-equipped group of representation right here. So if anyone has any questions, you could hold on to that a little and just listen a little while to our webinar, as we probably will be covering most of your questions already. And we welcome any questions at any time. We'll be keeping an eye on that. And as I said before, about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the webinar, we'll save that time for any kind of open questions that you guys are interested in. All right, so just a little touch up to everyone's self-introduction. They all come from pretty different academic backgrounds, and Reading has been here for a little while. So about emerging into the Canadian society and getting ready, academic wise, I think in that sense, right, Reading has a lot to say, and Reading has been holding a very competitive science related subject scores as well as learning experience. So if anyone is interested in science in particular, I think Reading will be taking up that side for us. And as Yuki kind of touched on in her self-introduction, social sciences related or arts in general, if you're interested in going into a liberal arts university, for example, or if you're interested in kind of asking what kind of program would be a good fit for me, I think Yuki will have great answers for that. And Leo's been walking across different lines, right? AP, at the same time enrolling in a full IB program in his school, and being a very kind of well-balanced in terms of sciences and arts in general. So I think that will give us wonderful, wonderful insights for today. All right, so I'm pretty excited for the rest of the content. I hope everyone else is as excited as we are, and we're gonna roll in without further ado. So number one, all right, I think the first kind of categorization or category that we're going to get into is you all had a lot of 5s, and we're all very curious in what it took to get a 5, because that's going to be something that's pretty valuable. However, for anyone who's not yet into AP or who's very curious and learning more about AP in general, let's answer this first question that most people have at first, which is, what is the value of AP in general? Well, what is it, and why are people going into it, and why is it competitive, right? And maybe we're going to start with Reading, and we'll have everyone touch on this a little for us.
So AP stands for advanced placement, and it's basically like a harder version of a grade 12 Ontario curriculum in which some content are taken from the freshman year of a university course. And then you can learn like a harder course within high school to prove to the university or college that you may want to go to, so that they can know that you have a certain ability over others in finishing their a university major or any pathway you will potentially go in. And yeah, that's how I perceive AP.
Well, very true. Yuki, what's your stance on that? What's the value of AP in general?
I think AP like readings has a lot of like value when it comes to applications, but also I think on a more day-to-day basis of high school, I think has great value in learning habits. Maybe what the Canadian curriculum, I think it changed in 2023. Before, like standardized testing was simply not a thing for a lot of schools. I know it wasn't for my school. So AP being a pretty big, long standardized testing, standardized test, I think is really valuable, like crossing the bridge between AP and college, where you're probably going to meet a lot more tests. So when it comes to learning habits and understanding yourself better as a learner, I think for me at least, I found big improvements in my learning habits. Yeah.
Well done. Okay, and it's very well shared input. And Leo, what about you?
Yeah, so like you said, one of the most important parts is learning how to learn, like the process of going through all the coursework is very valuable to a student. And it also, AP, it provides students with the rigor.
Oh, sorry. 1 second, Leo, I think you, yeah.
My
Now
bad,
it's good.
was
Yeah,
I muted?
sorry.
Okay, yeah. So like Yuki touched on, AP courses, the process of learning as you go through the coursework is very valuable to students, especially as you progress through high school. And AP provides students with a rigorous curriculum that mimics college level coursework, and it allows students to delve deeper into subjects of their interest, which colleges might appreciate. And AP courses also can lead to college credits when can help with exemption from introductory college courses, which can also save time and money, which is also
Yes.
helpful.
Yes, right. So I think all three of our guest speakers today have covered it pretty well. You learn harder courses earlier, pretty much like college level courses earlier in your high school. And as what College Board officially noted, you can start taking AP exams as early as in grade 8. So that kind of signals just how far beyond you are able to get over your peers. That is just a little reminder over there just to keep that at the back of your mind. And at the same time, I think everyone has mentioned on learning habits, learning and ability training. And so it's really about a 360-degree level up. So once again, everyone, if you need real-time captions, I think now you can see the icon show captions in the middle at the bottom of your screen. So if you think that is going to be very helpful for you, please click on that. Show captions in the middle, okay, down on the center screen. All right, so proceeding to the next question. What impact does it have on your overall academic competency? I think this is an interesting thing. So just how much more does it add, or how does it become like, well, to what extent does it become very helpful to you? Right, just a quick question there. Reading, yes.
So I think, as I mentioned, it's an extension of the Ontario curriculum in 12th grade. So I think it's very important, since you can actually feel what field you're going to. For example, if you're interested in, for example, science, then you can get into that field of what you're potentially going to major in university, and get a sense of if you really want to get into that field in the future, and plan your pathway, because you can still kind of change it in high school, but not really in university. It's harder and harder to change. So I think it's a really great experience to take AP in high school, and to also achieve a certain level of university, like freshman.
Great. Yuki, what's your take on that?
I think I completely agree with reading, in that like it is kind of harder to change majors, and it's also a waste of your time as much as it is a waste of your money. But I think it also has a good deal on if you're in the social sciences, and perhaps more so debate and model UN, certain courses like government and human geography can really help you when it comes to competitions. But even more so, like human geography can help you perhaps with school courses like your mandatory geography class that you have to take. So I think it transfers in many different areas. The knowledge itself and the content that you learn is very, I think, beneficial. Whether that's the competitions, essays, and things like that.
Great. Leo, you too?
So for specifically about academic competency, APs, they encourage like critical thinking, time management, and research skills, which are all very important for maybe your other school courses, and especially in college and beyond, which can help you pave your pathway to success.
Well, I think that's very well put, concise, but to the point. All right, and specifically for the next question, I think it's pretty interesting because sometimes we hear the idea of weighted GPA versus unweighted GPA. So about this weight part, I know that more, or many would have that kind of just wondering, okay, what does this weight do? And is it better to have unweighted GPA or maybe weighted GPA? And does AP do anything in that field particularly? Reading, want to take up this one for us?
I think it depends on different teachers at different schools. One of the teachers I know is that he evaluates your course score without the GPA, without AP course materials, and with AP course materials, and then he sees which one's higher, and then he puts that as your overall course score, in which that is for sure beneficial for you, since you're taking like a harder course based on the basic course of 12th grade Ontario curriculum. So in my opinion, I think taking an AP course is always beneficial for you to know more and to have a preview of the college course.
Right. And Leo, anything new maybe from you?
Not much. So like the unweighted doesn't take into account like how hard your courses are, and it's usually on a scale from 0 to 4. So if you're doing really well in all your classes, you're maybe at like above a 3.7, right? But if you take AP courses and you have a weighted GPA, sometimes your GPA would be above a 4.0, and some colleges appreciate that more than just the normal unweighted GPA scaling. So it just depends on which colleges you're applying to.
Absolutely. I think that weight part, everyone has explained very well of that, because this weight, as everyone who's here tonight, right, just simply consider that or equate it to rigor. And that translates to how difficult and challenging your courses are. And that has set AP advantage, well, pretty obviously, because AP is college level difficulty, entry year difficulty, if you will. And if you're taking that in high school, that has already helped standing you out from the rest. And as Leo kind of mentioned it, if you're doing already very well in your regular, let's say Ontario grade 12 curriculum, difficult, etc. If you're already doing very well in your other courses, you're probably getting a close to 4.0 scale GPA. But if you're at the same time nailing the AP courses, it's not rare for us to see beyond 4.0 GPA, and that's how it comes into being, is that you're taking harder courses, and universities and colleges absolutely love it. All right. Okay, next one. We kind of covered specific things about kind of AP in general, and what does it do in terms of helping us get readier and enhancing our overall academic competency. So the next question comes down to any unique advantages of AP learning, right? Does AP offer something special? And particularly with that, right, I'd like to mention a little, or just backtrack a little to Leo's background, where Leo's in an IB school, and he's at the same time very much involved in AP learning. So mind giving us a little bit of the AP versus IB kind of comparison right there? And does AP still give you something that you think is very valuable?
I think AP, the most like positive aspect of AP compared to IB is the freedom. And AP, you can take as many courses as you want, while in IB, you have a limit of 6 courses. And IB, I think IB is, they require you to do a lot more things, where in AP, you have a lot more freedom to like choose what you want to do. In IB, for each course, you're required to write a 1,500 word essay, but in AP, you don't really have that. And like, it takes a lot of time and it's not very fun. On AP, it's, like I said, a lot more flexible. You can amass a wide amount of experience in a lot of different subjects and find what you like to do. That can maybe help you choose your college major, which in IB, you're kind of stuck doing the same thing for like your 2 years of high school in grade 11, grade 12, which sometimes isn't as fun.
SAP, I guess. Yeah. So that, well, 2 things to particularly be aware of. Well, flexibility and that kind of mix and match capability that you have, right? So you could take, you could cross the line, you could cross the fields, or you could kind of walk different routes and see which one interests you more. So that flexibility, and you can start early too. I think that's also something that's pretty unique about AP in general, and particularly about Leo. I know that you've applied for Harvard secondary school program probably last year, is that right? And it's the program for high schoolers with credits, and that's with Harvard, so it's pretty prestigious. So do you find AP learning or AP scoring has helped you maybe in that aspect too?
Yeah, many of the courses you apply for the summer school programs, whether it's like Harvard or Stanford, they require some prerequisites, and many of those prerequisites are AP courses. So one of the courses I took was immunology that required a AP biology score, and so that helped with applications because they require you in order to join that class.
Right. And just on top of that, everything that you've been through in order to get that 5, which we'll touch on a little more later in our webinar tonight, like everything that you've been preparing for, or everything that you've, let's say, trained yourself for, those things would proven, as in Leo's case, we could get to see that very clearly, that to be proven very efficient and helpful and overall very competitive, that all of the things that you have acquired while you do that AP learning and training will be proven to be absolutely worthy. All right, Now let's move into the next category, which I think also would equally attract many people's attention, which is, do we have any master learning tips to share? And to be just a little more specific, let's say throughout your learning experience, everyone here easily has about a year or more than years of learning and experiences with AP. So has anything in your learning journey worked fantastically well for you? And if you don't mind, share that selflessly with everyone who's here tonight to help them kind of get a vibe of, okay, what it takes for me to grasp if I also want a 5 in AP. Radian, I'll begin with you.
I think personally, if it's AP or not AP, I think it's very important for you throughout the year or throughout a semester, because of the Ontario system. It's important for you to understand every single thing your teacher says in every single class. And if there's something that you don't understand in a certain class, after the class, go and ask the teacher and make sure you understand, because a lot of people over focus on reviews before midterms or finals. But I think it's not that necessary if you actually understand it really, really well throughout the semester. So I think, me personally, I would like to tell everyone to try to understand every single thing in class. If you don't understand, go ask the teacher, because answering questions is basically their job. And after you know these things, you can, as later knowledge will build on like previous knowledge you've learned. So I think it's very important that throughout the semester, throughout the year, you can understand every single thing, so that you don't have that much pressure when you're actually going into the review process. So yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah. So just ask questions like often and early. And if you have been all equipped and all ready throughout this whole learning experience, you wouldn't panic during that reveal period of time, because you pretty much have it all. I think that's very wonderful. Yuki, what about you? Anything that worked very well for you?
For me, I think it was like also the content was very important. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was actually focusing on the tests more so than the content. That's a huge mistake, considering College Board only gives you 2 to 3 tests max. And they're practice tests, so they're very, very valuable. So never, do the test for the sake of doing tests. Do the test to see where you're at and do them like meaningfully. So that being said, I think textbooks, okay, so I self-studied them. Well, no, I didn't self-study them, but like I had help with the teachers, but like I didn't do it with my school. So with that being said, like I think if you're not doing with your school, I think it's important to use textbooks and review your notes constantly, and probably reading your textbook a couple of times. Like I read mine maybe like 3 to 4 times. Was really helpful for me, and I thought it was probably even more helpful than the practice tests.
Awesome. Well, that would be very hands-on, practical advice for anyone who's here tonight. So take some notes. All right. Leo, what about you?
So like reading said, active engagement, if you are in a class, is very important. And so if you have any questions, make sure to ask as you get them, or else you might forget after the class is over. And that's not very good, because you want to understand the concepts as you move through the course. And like Yuki said, going through the textbook is very helpful, and you're going to want to take notes and maybe summarize the materials you get from the textbook. And one thing I find helpful is, like, after you finish like a chapter or section, you close the book and write down everything you remember, and then go back and then see what you missed. That can help like fill the gaps. And then
Great.
if you have friends or like other people there to support you, you can try teaching what you learned to them, because teaching is also another way of learning that can help solidify your understanding.
Really, really, I think they are very hands-on, great advice for everyone who's here tonight. Yeah, so in class active engagement is number 1, but you could always have a little very friendly and supportive peer interaction too, and that also help you understand better of the concepts. And there's another question that I think is interesting to ask, which Yuki kind of touched on it already, which is what you hope that, let's say you had known a lot better or earlier in your learning process. So this is kind of like a reflection period of time to say, now that I look back into my learning journey, is there anything that I could have done a little better, provided the fact that if I had known something better and earlier in the process. Maybe in this time, I'll begin with Leo, because you can kind of give us a little share on that too. So maybe Leo and then Radian.
I think like understanding how much content there is for each course is very important. Don't start studying too late, and don't procrastinate too much, because you're gonna end up having a lot of things on your plate, and you might not have enough time to study, say in like April and May as the tests come around. So starting earlier is always better.
Right. Totally true. What about you, reading?
So I think it's important to understand like what each subject actually is and what content is taught, because if you're new to like high school, maybe you don't know what's the difference between macro and microeconomics. You don't know the difference between AP Calculus B, C, and AB. So I think it's important to know which course you're specifically taking. And also, as Leo said, it's important to manage your time and start earlier with your review process. And yeah, that will have a better result for you instead of just rushing everything at the last few days.
Absolutely, because let's just not forget that at the same time, that first of all, many students would enroll in multiple AP Learning in 1 year. And on top of all that, they were handling regular schoolwork. So let's just not forget about how much workload you are ready to take on. I think this does become some of the things that people have to think very carefully through, and you have to make very clear expectation levels for yourself so that you know how much you're able to handle, and then make very specific plans for those and then actually execute, right? Yuki, if there's anything kind of new or maybe something else that you'd like to share with us regarding this aspect?
I think they got it like all done.
Pretty much, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And now I'm going to begin with you, Yuki, as another question arises, which is which particular areas would you advise AP learners to pay specific attention to? So let's say, for example, they were deciding whether or not to go into AP, or maybe they are pretty much already embarking on their journey. Any particular areas that you would advise them to pay attention to in that particular kind of starting stage?
I think it's important to like understand a little bit about yourself and your interests. If you're somebody who hates math, don't take statistics, don't take any math-based course. Not because it's not useful for you, but rather you're going to hate your journey towards it. And you might even drop out at the end. And you have to register quite early as well. So there's that. But also like, I think as much as interest is important, so is your like how good you are at a course is also important. AP, as Reading and Leo said, like it is difficult. It's going to be challenging, but but that being said, like it's not impossible, but you should also be aware that like if you're not good at something, not very, very good at something, I would not recommend taking it.
Right, so know yourself better, or this is actually kind of like a self-discovery journey too. You will get a sense of it kind of throughout your regular schoolwork, and I would really, really just recommend everyone taking a look at that aspect first. Like, what is something that does not take you, let's say, a ton of time, and you're doing pretty well? That's probably a positive sign, right? Leo, anything from your side?
Yeah, so very similar to what Yuki said, you're gonna want to focus on your academic interests, and like if you choose courses that you like, you'll probably be more motivated to study, and that can make studying more enjoyable. And you want to dive deep into subjects that resonate with you, because like if like Yuki said, if you're taking math but you hate it, that's not really gonna get you anywhere. But I would also say, like, if you really want to try something you have no experience in, I would say like go for it. Like, say maybe you have no clue what psychology is, but you want to like you're kind of interested in it. I would say go for it just to get that experience. But yeah, you're gonna like don't take the courses you hate. That's not recommended.
Right, yeah. And I think like kind of getting a sense of something new is also echoing with something that we just talked about, which is that unique advantage of AP, the flexibility, right? You're able to kind of try out different things, which you might not have the chance to do it maybe in the regular school year. It just always allows you with that little extra tip of freedom, actually. Reading, what about you?
So I want to add on to Leo's thought, because I think if you're taking like an AP course, a lot of those courses will depend on, for example, your 11th grade courses or courses you've taken in like your 9th, 10th grade, 11th grade high school courses. Because for example, for math, it's a building on process for knowing new things. It's not like it's just throwing you information and you just need to recite them. It's very different from other subjects. So I think it's also important to have like a basic knowledge of a certain field or certain subject, so that you can build onto that and achieve better in your AP learning pathways. And yeah.
Awesome. I think those things combined with what we were just talking about, and if we kind of on top of that also think what are kind of like the package of good things that AP were able to provide you with, I think people have more than enough information to look to when they're trying to make their decisions or are ready to really just kind of step into this realm of learning. All right, so we kind of talked a little bit about kind of what courses to take, but let's just be a little more specific regarding the subject selection strategies, right? Because everybody's time is precious and we don't want to kind of try out on one thing and then ended up, I don't like it, but time is all gone, right? So we would want to make sure that everyone has been making some very targeting and effective decision making. So how did that work out with you guys? And the number one question that I would like to ask is regarding the subject selection, is there any rule of thumb, something that would work very well other than something that we just talked, like don't choose the subjects that you dislike or you feel like you're not going to do very well in? Well, are there any other things that maybe are very, very basic and very, very fundamental that is kind of like one of the must knows for people? And in that sense, I'll maybe begin with Leo.
Yeah, so like on the opposite spectrum, don't picking subjects you don't like. Go for the subjects that you do like and are good at. So prioritize the subjects that you excel in, and maybe also those that relate in your intended college or major and future career, because those will help you get a head start compared to people who maybe aren't taking AP. That'd be helpful.
So, Yuki, what about you? Rule of thumb?
I think it's always good to talk to people who has taken the course before. So you could talk to people who, like, for government, I think I talked to a person who was older to me, and then she really enjoyed the course, which kind of motivated me to do it because I kind of get a bit of like what the content is like, how difficult it is, but then also keep in mind that everyone's a bit different. But also getting to know that, what generally speaking, what the content is, I think is really helpful. But talking to another person who's done the course, I think gives you a sense of like, I don't know, relief almost, but like a person that you can rely on in case you do have any questions, and even just like questions about what the course is really about.
Yeah, I think doing that little part of the research is absolutely very important too. Rating, what about you?
I also think it's very important to connect with like someone that's older than you that has taken the course, or like a teacher that knows you very well. Because me personally, I before I choose between calculus AB and BC, for people who don't know, AB is like an easier version of BC. It's an easier and harder course. And I actually asked a lot of my friends that are in 12th grade, or some of the teachers that have taught me before, so that they know my level of math and where I am, and ask them their suggestions about what course I should take. And I think their feedback were really very useful for me to make my final decision on choosing which course I'm deciding to take.
Yeah, so I think in that sense, kind of everybody sort of touches on very well of how did you select your AP subjects, which is to first of all kind of get started with your schoolwork and just to see your regular academic performance, get connected with someone who's older than you, who knows you very well. I think in that sense, talk to your counselors, talk to your subject teachers in particular. I think that will be a very enlightening and very wise thing to do. And on top of that, connect with someone who's taken the course before, do your research, ask questions, reach out, and make sure that you're talking to the right people so that they know you well, to understand whether this will be some, let's say, great decisions to make, because it's a great level of commitment that everyone will be devoting yourself and your time and your energy toward. So it's going to be, let's say we all want to make informed decisions. So all of that kind of preliminary research, or you could quote unquote homework that you need to do, are all going to be very worthy, right? But as I kind of mentioned it before, this is a personalized journey. Everyone's situation is a little different and everyone has unique academic interests and untapped talent. So if you have very specific questions regarding your mix and match or combinations of subject learning, do make sure that you're reaching out to us. We're more than happy to answer more of your kind of personal questions or private questions on a one-on-one basis. All right. Okay, the next question is pretty interesting, which is how many AP, the numbers, right? We all know that it's kind of getting into a numbers game. Everyone is easily having, let's say, multiple APs at hand. So how many do you think is going to be a competitive number for students who are capable and are willing to devote more of their time into? I'm going to begin with Yuki for this one.
I think this depends on your goal. This also depends. I think it's always good to have like a goal by like from like the freshman year, so to like grade 12, like how many APs you want to take. For me, I want to get to 10 by the end of grade 11. For me, I'm on a good track. I think like how many APs you want to take depends on what university you potentially want to go to. You can, there's like statistics about different universities, right? I think at the top ones, usually 10 to 12, like the top ones, usually 10 to 12 is the average. But then again, like it really depends where you want to go, your interests, honestly. Um, so I think it just depends on you. I think, but it's always good to do a bit of research about your university or your dream school. And that should like help you lead a path forward.
Awesome. All right. Leo?
AP subjects. I wasn't going to take AP. My plan was to only do IB, but in grade 9, I decided on a whim to start doing APs. Um, for how many, it really depends on how much work you can handle. I would say like anything more than 4 APs is kind of stretching it a little bit. There's a lot in each subject and trying to balance, and all the APs are usually within like 2 weeks, so you have to like learn all the material beforehand. It's a lot, so like taking too many is not recommended. You could try balancing your AP coursework throughout your 4 years of high school, maybe like 3 a year or maybe more in your final years as you like understand content better would be recommended.
Mm-hmm. All right. Radian, what about you?
So I think I agree with them, like about 3 per year or 4 each year. I think that's already a lot since, but there's techniques you can do. But for example, if you're deciding to start AP in like 9th grade, you can take the subjects that you like more so that you'll be more interested in learning them and achieve like a better score. And maybe you're deciding to take other subjects that you're not as good in like 11th grade or 12th grade, but you'll have more knowledge at that level or at that grade, so that you'll also achieve well in those subjects. So, and I also think it depends on where you're specifically going to. If you're going to the US, of course, you'll need a lot of AP, but if you're going for like Canadian universities, they don't need as much. So yeah, it has a lot of factors that go in. So I think it depends on each individual, each student.
Right. Yeah. So I think one thing that resonates throughout all of your sharing just now is that this is something that needs long-term planning, and we better have like a systemic plan that we're able to track where we are, so that you're not getting lost, you're not getting distorted, you're not getting distracted in the best case scenario, but also knowing early of your academic interests and where you're going. I think that really does make a key difference regarding how many APs you're able to handle. But we think we have a pretty good number and pretty good response to that question, which is 3 to 4 per year would be already quite a lot, because everyone's situation, once again, is different. And how committed you are, I think that's also something that we cannot forget. Regarding all of that, right? It's always kind of like an amalgamation, and you will have to make your best decision that is best to your interest, and then get ready for this journey, because it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is one of my favorite models regarding AP learning because it is so true. All right, next one. Okay. Now I'd like to get into a little bit of the preparation timeline, right? Because not everyone begins learning AP in their grade 9, right? Some people probably only making their decisions when they're getting into their junior year, or maybe 10th grade, which is pretty common. So let's say, in your opinion, or what's your experience, how advanced, how far beyond should students get started to kind of maybe thinking or getting involved with AP learning? In that sense, maybe Leo first, and then Yuki, and then Brittany.
So like starting like taking APs in grade 9 is a good starting point. I would say like starting to understand the subjects you plan on taking like during the summer before the school year starts is helpful, but it isn't really required. Like you could start in September and still do really well. I would say you want to finish all the content like before like April or March, so that way you have time to like really like reflect on what you learn and like apply what you have learned to practice questions, which can give you like a better chance on the tests.
Okay, all right. So we have a little bit of that from Leo's take. And what about you, Yuki?
I think honestly, because AP has a lot of benefits when it comes to understanding yourself as a learner, starting as early as 8th grade isn't necessarily a bad idea. Granted, you might not do that well. I didn't do that well. But you know, because you get a bit of like of the taste of what these long standardized testings are, you know how to study better and you know how to study smarter. I think it sets up for success in the future. I think I agree with like Leo's time, like schedule and timeline. You should be finished like all the content by maybe like March. You should be finished by March, and then maybe do 1 or 2 practice tests, depending on how many you have in April, and then further reviewing your content before doing a final one, like maybe 2 days before your test. But I think this timeline can be adjusted very easily, depending on person to person.
Great. Reading?
I also think it's a pretty good idea to start like around 9th grade. Like you can start to know some things, like know about AP starting 8th grade. But I think if you're actually starting to choose AP courses, they should start in 9th grade because in terms of like college application, you're applying in 12th grade. So you actually only have like 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade to take AP courses that you're gonna report to the school, other than like after you take it, you tell the school after the school year is done for your 12th grade year. And I think 3 years is like a reasonable amount of time for you to accomplish all your AP courses that you want to take. So I would suggest that. And in terms of the content for each course, I also agree with March and April, because after you finish that, I think the review process shouldn't be like a like finishing everything in 3 days. I think you should know how much content there are for each course and then plan yourself in the upcoming like month or something before the exam, so that you can have a well-prepared timeline to prepare for your AP exam.
Right. I think those are really words of wisdom. They've tested those out with your, let's say, own cases, and we've seen a lot of early starters. But once again, like those things, ideally speaking, start picking your AP subjects and get involved in the learning and experiences starting in grade 9. And you could do some preliminary research in grade 8. But I know that once again, this is not something as ideal for everyone who maybe started just a little later. Let's say you began learning more about AP in grade 10 or maybe grade 11. Then at those particular stages, really what's very, very important for you is to make sure, number one, you know exactly which subjects to choose. So this is not kind of like a wandering off time, because time really isn't very lenient, or let's say we don't really have that much time if we began in grade 10 or maybe grade 11. So then make sure choose your courses right from the very beginning and do ample research so that you're not wasting any more time, but just make sure that you're pushing to your maximum, let's say, very effectively, right? Because time does matter in that sense of your learning, and it's about a year preparation, right? And we think people have touched on quite well about the preparation as well as the timeline. One quick question regarding kind of key stages or milestone events. I know that all of you kind of mentioned about this by March or April, sort of finish all your content, but it's a year preparation. So are there any other things that we should be looking into, or any other key stages or milestones before this March or April stamp right there? Leo, I'll begin with you.
I would say like if you're taking multiple AP courses, maybe like see how many chapters there are for each course you're taking, and I would say split those chapters for each subjects within that months you have. So if you start in September, you have around like 7 months before March, and say there are like 13 chapters. Some chapters are longer than others, so you're gonna want to give yourself ample time to get through every single chapter. So like every few weeks, you're gonna want to move on. Setting like specific goals in a specific amount of time is really helpful within your 7 months.
Preparation, right? So detailed and systemic time management sort of planner there, and then execute your plan and then make sure that you're constantly tracking where you are. Wonderful. Yuki, what about you?
I think I agree with Leo. Like a halfway mark is always a really good way to stop and reflect and think, how much do I have left? Do I need to pick up the speed and things like that? I think another milestone, like maybe not, this is not before April, the studying part, but I think it's just as important, is when you finish the test, the moment you finish the test. I think, I don't know if it's for everybody, but when I finish such a big test, I often have like my emotions, because it's very emotionally and physically exhausting test. Sometimes it's like 3 hours. I think history tests are even longer than 3 hours. With full concentration, it's going to be very exhausting, and sometimes you're going to feel like you failed it. And it's a very common feeling to feel that. Like I thought I failed the psychology test. Like I was panicking a lot. But I did just fine. I got a 5. So I think it's always good to like calm yourself down, and like those emotions that you feel when you're really stressed and anxious and emotionally exhausted may not reflect the like really how well you did. So I think it's always good to like regulate your emotions.
That's great. Reading?
I think as Leo said, all of the courses I took are separated into chapters, and for each chapter there's a kind of like review for that certain chapter. So after you finish each chapter, I think it's important for you to go back and look at the content you've learned in that chapter and make sure that you've understand those things, so that at the end you don't need to review for that long time. And yeah, it'll make it more efficient for you to learn throughout the course.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
it really just demystify this whole journey and this whole process, and then just sort of cut them or split them into manageable chunks, so that once you've taken one, you feel good about yourself because you've done something that you should be very proud of yourself with. And then kind of make sure that you're constantly having this regulation or regulatory manners or mechanisms for your emotion. That's actually the next thing that I would like to talk about real quick, which is it's a very long journey, especially for people who are taking APs on pretty much in a roll. Like you're doing, for example, you plan to take multiple APs throughout your 4-year or 3-year journey, then you're doing it every year and you're constantly challenging yourself with new things. And it could be very emotionally exhausting. So we know the process could be very stressful. So throughout your learning AP processes and journey, how do you keep yourself motivated? Have you ever found a time that you're really down? How did you deal with it? Well, in this sense, I'll begin with Yuki first.
I think for me, this is not going to work for everyone, but I operate under stress. So this being said, in January, I'll take a test. And January is when like I just like maybe read the textbook like once and I'm not very familiar with it. And I know I'm not very familiar with it. So I take the entire test of one of the practice tests and I look at how bad I usually get, just because I'm not finished with the entire review process. And then that makes me really not anxious, but that makes me get a feeling of urgency. And so I just power through from January to May. Granted, this is not going to work for everyone, but this is something that has worked for me to keep up my motivation in the last few months.
Right. So just that little push that we need when you know that we're almost there, but not yet. And I have to keep working it. And maybe sometimes, some people work better under pressure. But of course, as we know, it's kind of like an elastic band. It was better not stretched too far, right? Where people couldn't really bounce back. So give yourself a little pressure, appropriate, healthy level of pressure. Sometimes can make you work better. Awesome. Very interesting idea to share with everyone who's here. Leo, what about you? How do you keep your motivations and how do you keep yourself constantly just kind of productive throughout a journey?
I would say like always think about your end goal, like why you're doing this. Like you're obviously taking your AP courses to like do well and also like to prepare for your future. So think about the end goal, but like don't always keep that on your mind. Like celebrate the small achievements. Like once you finish a chapter for a subject, like find joy in like the small things, and that can help you like slowly inch your way towards the final. And that's very helpful.
Right. Just to know that everything that you're doing now, every minute that you're spending, and all the tests that you've been through, every session that you've attended, everything that you're doing is a small step toward your end goal. But sometimes just give yourself a break, right? Take a break. It's okay to have a break. It's okay to kind of lose a day or two. You have ample time as long as you're constantly on track. You know what exactly needs to be done. Some relaxation can help people better function, right? Radian, anything on top of that?
No, I strongly agree with Yuki because I also took like practice tests on the college board so that I know how bad I am, because like half the questions I don't know how to do them. So I made sure I do like more practice tests and go back to the content and review them, so that at the end I'm really like well prepared for the exam, so that I can achieve better on the actual exam that you're doing in May.
Awesome. Well, we are close to the wrap here. So now I think it's a wonderful time for everyone or anyone to post any questions that you're having. I'm monitoring the meeting chat, the chat box. So if you have any kind of specific questions that you'd like to ask, and now it's a perfect time for them to send in. We still have a couple of questions to go through. So while we are still making the conversations, we're still giving, well, our insightful observations. People can tune in and then, well, let us know if you have any questions that you are still interested to ask. All right, next questions. We all feel down at certain times, and any small or specific useful tips for you to counter laziness, or let's just all say procrastination, as we all have them. You just don't feel like it. Okay, what do we do? Yuki, maybe we'll begin with you.
I actually received this tip from my French teacher at school, but essentially he recommended us that we set a 10-minute timer. And so every time the timer rings, you can check in on yourself to see if you're studying or are you doing something else. And if you are doing something else, it's just a reminder to get back on track, but it also makes sure that you don't procrastinate any more than 10 minutes, which is like really beneficial, because like sometimes you procrastinate, watch YouTube or something, you lose track of time.
Right.
But with this method, I find that it's okay to procrastinate. It happens to the best of us, but it like makes sure that you don't go over 10 minutes or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's great. Just have a little alarm on, easily setting that up, and everyone could have just, it's a work at your fingertips. And if you happen to be really able to kind of just stick to that plan, anything that's small, but if you're consistently persisting on it and you are just showing your perseverance there, it's maybe small step at a time, but you will eventually lead us to where we want to go. Well, very awesome. Leo, what about you?
For combating procrastination, I would say like put your work into manageable chunks, and like say maybe work for 45 minutes and take like a 5-minute break and continuing to do that. Like that helps keep your focus on the work. And one thing that like eliminating distractions is very important. And one thing I did was like I gave my phone to a friend and had them like set up a screen time for all my apps and like create a password so I wouldn't be able to access anything. And so there was like a portion during the year where I just couldn't do anything on my phone, even if I wanted to. So all I could do was study. And so that was kind of helpful.
That's pretty like a enforced little action to be done. Well, I would recommend that to anyone who just feels like you can't ever get your hands off of your phone. Well, give it to somebody else, kind of lock it, or somebody else has it and, well, gives a temporary password, like you would want to hack in your phone, but you couldn't. Well, that would just kind of force your attention into doing what you really are supposed to do. I think that this slide is a little more restrictive, but I think it's worth trying, especially for those ones who think you're a late stage procrastinator. Well, give it a shot. Radian, what about you?
So I think it's important to know how much content there actually is within like a certain course, because for me, I checked before, like 1 month before the May exam, and I made sure that, okay, these are the chapters that I need to review, and how long will these take for me, and like have like an estimated amount of time that I actually need. And for example, like if you need like 2 weeks, then 2 weeks before the exam, you have to self-motivate yourself to actually do those things, or else you won't be able to achieve the score or a certain level that you wanted to achieve. So I think it's also very important to tell yourself after this exam, if you do really well and you're over with this thing almost for the rest of high school, because you took like the hardest course you could take in high school. So I think it's very important to notice these things and motivate yourself to study before the exam.
Right. Yeah. So in that regard, I think we were just talking about like early into the whole process, you wouldn't want to always keep yourself reminded of the end goal, because you're still kind of distant to your end goal. You're walking toward it, you're working toward it too. But 2 weeks before or a month before, now it's time to really make sure that that end goal is echoing in your mind and you're thinking actively, proactively, and you're doing everything that you can, because now it's kind of sprint time, right? You've done all the work before to make sure that you're ready to go there. And now it will be the time to just make sure that, okay, now I need to do my very best. It's the last kind of 2 weeks and I wouldn't want to regret, right? Yeah, and there's been one question here. I'll read it and then let's go on and try to take a look. Something about human geography, trouble associating conceptual knowledge with events going on in society. Could you please give me some suggestions related to how to analyze these using spatial perspective. So associating conceptual knowledge with things that are actually happening in reality. I think that's a wonderful question and it's very specific. So Yuki, mind giving us a little take?
I think this is the type of questions you see on MCQs and probably, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't remember if it's FRQs, but I think I've seen this something like this in like spatial analysis and they give you a photo basically, and then you're supposed to analyze it and like things like that. Generally speak, if that's what you're talking about, if not, you could interrupt me if you would like. But I think when it comes to analyzing these, it's important to, I think the college likes to use religion a lot. So maybe like understanding like certain religions, their important monuments is really important. You know, I think for me, honestly, I think there's some questions about like what language is potentially or what country potentially this is in. I think for that, I think it's really just familiarizing yourself with the textbook. I know the variants have images to go along with what they're talking about. But yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And in the meantime, everyone, once again, we'll hold on for about a minute or two as we do a close remarks. So in the meantime, if you do have any questions, specifically, let's say science related, calculus, okay, if you like to go to engineer or once again, anything that's something in your mind, now's your best shot to give your questions. And we still have people right here who are very experienced, knowing this field quite well, so they can answer your questions. All right. So in the meantime, I just wanted to say at least, or let's say at last, that this is a very long journey. So do make sure that you're monitoring your mental health and your well-being in a very careful manner and in a timely manner too. So reaching out to professional assistance, if that's necessary, absolutely go ahead, because when you are feeling proactive, you're feeling ready, and you do make sure that your brain functions and works and it's in a very healthy and proactive mode, then you're more than guaranteed to do well, right? It's the same with your schoolwork too, just to make sure that you're adding quite a lot of weight, either it's GPA wise or it is course load wise, you are adding a lot of weight to what you're doing. So make sure that you know yourself. I think that's some of the major takeaways for today. Know yourself, know your academic interests, talk to people who know you well, get professional advice, talk to your counselors, and make sure that you're always making your informed decisions, especially if you are somewhere in the middle of your high school, right? Let's say grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, if you're, let's say, an 11th grader and you would like to challenge yourself for AP, make sure you're making your course selections and your subject selections very wisely, all right? Okay, so someone else has a question. I'm going to grade A, really want to study law when I grow up. What AP courses should I take? Okay, well, this is an interesting take. Maybe Yuki can get us started on that. Anything that you think would be a good foundational sort of prep courses that she can take on?
So I also want to go into law, hopefully when I go in the future. So I can feel you on this. I think it's from what I've seen, because the people in my family who are lawyers, from what I've heard, like taking histories are really good, whether it's as a major or as AP psychology, not psychology, in the AP history, US history, Euro history, because there's a lot of reading involved. This being said, like there's a bunch of like histories, they require a lot of readings, from the free response questions to the multiple choice questions. There's so much reading, and I think it's really good. I think it's just good practice in general to understand these harder texts, which is what, from what I've heard, like you'll see a lot in law. I would recommend the histories, but keep in mind they are the more challenging ones. They're actually one of the most challenging ones in the APs in general. But there's also like AP US government or AP comparative government. So US government is just the US government structure, and the comparative government is actually the government comparing government structures of 6 different countries that have like a variety of different government structures, which is what I took. I really enjoyed that course. I found it really fun to study, and I would just generally really recommend that course.
Awesome. So I hope that answers your question. And it's great. We're going to have a little close remarks right here. Once again, thank you so much for everyone who's attending it tonight. And especially shout out to our guest speakers tonight, Radian, Yuki, and Leo, who have been just nothing but amazing, and given us a lot of insights and a very informative pack of information. So I would really recommend everyone, once our recorded version of tonight's webinar is available and we upload it to the YouTube channel, absolutely make sure that you're subscribing to that. And once again, if you still have any questions, you could leave down there on a comment and we'll make sure to get to that too. All right, so just a last little remark to who we are and what we do. We are a not-for-profit NGO incorporated here in Canada, and we're really committed to providing awesome, authentic, and first-person view sort of information for everyone who's in need of academic counseling or student counseling, if you're interested in that. And we welcome anyone and everyone to come join us. You could be the next guest speaker if you propose, right, anything interesting in it, or you could always find a way to get involved here with us. So we thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate all your time and attention, and I'm hoping that we're answering some of the questions that people are having. So once again, thank you all very much, specifically to our guest speakers who have been amazing tonight. And that will be it. I'll see everyone in about 2 weeks after we have a wonderful new kind of back to school vibe of new webinars rolling out with everyone. So absolutely make sure you're staying in tune, and we welcome everyone to join us very soon again. All right, so good night, everyone, and we will see you very soon. Thank you so much, Radian, Yuki, and Leo. All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.